Hello everyone. I would like to discuss about IELTS test today. IELTS stands for International English International English Language Testing System. So this particular test, IELTS test, is usually taken by individuals who are planning to immigrate to an English-speaking country. So there are the purpose of immigration might be different, but it is usually expected for a person to take up this particular test. And in India, an Australian company called IDP administer this test, and you can enroll for IELTS through their website. And IELTS, there are two kinds of tests, academic and general. So I always recommend academic IELTS for everyone, because academic IELTS is accepted by almost all the universities of English speaking countries. And so usually the companies which are planning to recruit look forward for so they consider IELTS academic in contrast to IELTS general. So IELTS general doesn't have this particular benefit. So always, I recommend to go with IELTS academic. And even in IELTS academic, there are two kinds of tests, that is paper delivered and computer delivered. So it depends on the convenience of an individual. Few people have good, few people find it beneficial to write and present it on a paper. So that is one option, and another is computer delivered test. So why? It's purely, here I don't have a particular recommendation. So people can either go paper delivered or computer delivered. So it is only that, computer delivered, test centers are quite limited, appointments are quite limited, where paper delivered are, so they happen quite frequently. So that is one reason people go for paper delivered test. However, computer delivered test, the result will be produced within 3 days. So the result will be very quick. So the people who have an urgency of completing this test can always go for computer delivered test. And whereas paper delivered test, sometimes take 10 to 15 days for you to receive the results of it. So that is why, computer delivered test is most often preferred. And there are four sections, so there are four sections in ELTS academic. So that is LSRW, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So, but not specifically in this order. So usually listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So that is the order which you can find. So, let's talk about listening section. So listening section is very simple. Few audio clips will be played, and, based on that audio clips, the questions will be asked. And the questions will always be an objective type question. That is, there would be an absolute right answer. And the right answer would be right answer would be something like, sorry, right answer would be something like, either in the form of a word, either in the form of a phrase, or multiple choice questions, ABCD, or numbers, 8 a.m., 9 p.m., and all that. So this would be how a person responds to these questions. So there would be four recordings, and based on the four recordings, so 10 questions will be asked for each. So that would make it 40 questions. So based on the 40 questions, they will be allotted scores. And let's talk about the scoring at the end. So meanwhile, in this section, in the listening section, there are four parts. So that is, four audio recordings and the questions related to it. So first audio recording will be majorly a conversation between two people in a ordinary social context. So where did you go last night? And so last night I had been to a restaurant, and how was the restaurant? What was special about that restaurant? So all these things will be asked in task one or part one of listening section. In the listening section, part two. So it will be majorly about an announcement. It will be an announcement, either an announcement about a local facility, or an advertisement of something which is maybe a club or something. So that is the second part. The third part will again be a conversation, and conversation here is usually in a college setting, where an individual will be asking about enrolling for a music class, for example, or an individual might be asking for dormitory facilities. So it's a conversation. A person would answer the question and all that. So based on that, questions will be asked. The fourth part of listening section is a bit tricky, because this will be an academic lecture. This will be a lecture about some particular topic. So the topic of this lecture can be anything. It might be from biology, it might be from anthropology, it might be from history. It can be from anything. So an individual has to carefully listen to listen to the audio and make proper notes before answering them, so that they don't miss anything. So these are the four parts of listening section. Of course, uh, part four is slightly challenging, and all other parts are very easy. It can be answered without any much difficulty. So once a person have once a person has enough experience answering these questions, they won't find this section difficult at all. This is one of the easiest sections which you can find in IELTS. So one thing to notice here is that there will be a provision for looking at the questions beforehand. So before listening to the audio, a person can go through the questions once, so that they will have an idea what are the key points to look for and what are the key points to make note of. So that is listening section. So, and hopefully this will be very easy for the aspirants of this test. And then we have reading section is very this you would have encountered prior. So the idea is very simple. There would be passages, there would be a bunch of paragraphs which will be given, and based on those based on those paragraphs, questions will be asked, right? And this seems very simple, but in my experience, a lot of people make mistake in this particular section. So despite their preparations, it is very easy to commit mistakes in reading section compared to other sections. So one has to be very careful, trying to understand, like what exactly has been asked, and how we can respond to it. But no need to panic. With practice, reading section is will also become quite easy. So there would be three passages which will be provided, and based on these passages, 40 questions will be asked. So these 40 questions, can be of different types. Some of the questions will be multiple choice. Some of the questions will be matching the information. Some of the questions will be sentence completion. There would be a sentence, and one a blank space will be given that has to be answered. A short answer, and sometimes there will be a diagram, an image and a diagram, and the diagram will be unlabeled, and they'll have to tell what word fits there and all that. So that would be reading section. So one of the things that has to be carefully read are the instructions themselves, more than the paragraph. Passages, of course, people read, but they often don't read the instructions, right? So because instructions will be very clear, whether they have to answer in one word, three word, whether they have to answer ABCD or number. So so this instruction will be very clear. So sometimes the question will be answer in a word, and they use a number there. So that is wrong. If word is asked, word has to be inserted there. If a number is asked, number has to be inserted there. If one word specifically asked, you can't write three words. You have to write only one word. If three words is asked, one word. If you really think that is the answer, one word would be fine. Maximum would be three words. So anyway, and when abcd is asked, you can't answer it with words. So that is that has to be carefully noted down. And that is reading section. The reading section is not once a person has enough practice trying to understand what exactly to look for, it would be much easier as long as they're careful about the instructions. So if they ignore the instructions, it is difficult. Then we have writing section. A writing section is like, there would be just two parts. And one part is like, there would be an image given, and that image will contain some kind of chart, some kind of graph, diagram, table, map. So whatever, basically an image which has lot of information, and a person will be asked to write a report based on that information. So report in the sense like, what are, let us say it's a graph, well, let's say it's a bar chart, bar chart. And in the year 2000, 11, population of India was 130 crores. In the 2012, it was 140 crores. All these things, information will be given. I'm just, giving an example. I know that, in 2011, India's population was 121. Anyway, so this is how the information will be given, and a person has to describe what is given on the report. And when describing, they have to use words like, in 2015 there was a sudden inclination in the population increase, and all these things, these minor things have to be noted. So if they are analytical in nature, like, compared to 2012, 2015 had a great increase of population. So all these things they have to notice from that particular image and write it. So that is writing task one. And writing task two is a formal essay. So a person will be asked to write a formal essay based on a content, a small content which will be given. The content will be, first sentence would be a premise. Premise in sense like, so the population is increasing in the country. So what can be done for it? Do you think it's a good idea to increase the population? Do you think we have to control? If we have to control, what kind of measures have to be taken? So this essay will be, this is the essay which a person have to write for task two. And, they would be combining of these two tasks. They would be given 1 hour. And IDP or IELTS, makers of IELTS do not exactly say that, how you have to divide this time, but it is always recommended that, 20 minutes is allotted for the task one or part one, that is diagrams or charts, and 40 minutes for the formal essay. So that is usually, what makes more sense, because task two, the scores allotted for task two is double of task one. So it makes sense to allot 20 minutes and 40 minutes. So, that would be writing section. Then we have speaking section. One thing to notice about speaking section is that, speaking section is where the questions will be asked and a person have to, answer as simple as that. And, their speech will be assessed. And, one thing, many people ignore is the formality. So formality in the sense like, so when a question is asked, it has, our answer should be in a formal tone. Informal tone will not be penalized, but some examiners might not, like it. And, it might not be appropriate for all the questions which will be asked. So, whereas formal tone will not have any problem. Like, all the questions, can be answered in the formal tone. So better to practice with the formal tone itself. No need to mix and match with the informal and formal. And, so for those who have also those who also understand, semi-formal is also not something which is recommended for speaking section. I mean, sometimes it works wonderfully, yes. As long as you are able to understand when to use formal and when to use semi-formal, it is fine. But for general public, I always recommend use formal language here. And there are three parts again in the speaking section. The first part of speaking section will be, information about, it will be a conversation. A question will be asked, as you answer, another question will be asked, then you answer, then, a follow-up question will be asked, you answer, and so on. So usually the questions will be based on the candidate, like, where they are from, who are the people in their family, and related questions to that, if it is about childhood, like, what are some of the activities you liked as a as a child, and where what kind of games were you playing, during your childhood. So these are the questions which will be asked in part one. Right, it will be like, home, it might be about home, it might be about family, it might be about work, it might be about studies, or, it might be about hobbies. So these are the major things which will be asked here. So, and, part one is very easy because it is about our own self. Like, if, when a question is asked about us, we tend to answer it fluently. And so that is why the first question will be about it, and the second question will be about, it will be about a particular topic. And the topic might be related to society, the topic might be related to one's own self. So there is a range of topics which are present. And how it works is like, examiner will give a card actually. So if it is in person, examiner will give you a card, and that card will contain one heading, one main topic, and three subtopics. So, for example, the main topic is something like, yeah, let's take the same thing, the last book you have read. So that would be the heading, and the, 3 points would be like, who would like this book, like, what made you read this book, and fourth one maybe, are there a lot of people who enjoy this book. So these are the three sub points which will be given. So you and candidate will be given 1 minute of preparation time when they receive this card, and after that 1 minute, they will have to speak continuously for 2 minutes regarding all the things which are present there. So all the parts have to be covered. And then, we have task 3, and task 3 will be again conversation. Task 2 will not be a conversation. For 2 minutes, the person has to speak continuously, 2 to 3 minutes. So a person has to speak continuously, and there would be no response from the person who asked question. But in the task 3, so task 3, like, it will be based on the similar things that you find in task 2. So the similar questions asked in task 2 will be continued in task 3. And so this will be, much more of some abstract ideas, or social issues related to that. If it is book, the in the part 3, the question can be asked, do you think habit of reading book is declining, and what can you make to increase the habit of reading. So these kind of questions will be asked, and the person is expected to answer, and it's a conversation. Why as they answer, another question will be asked, answer, another question, answer, another question, and so on. So this is task 3. So that would end IELTS test. All the 4 sections will be covered. Let me just address some of the misconceptions that is present about IELTS test. So usually some people think that, in order to get decent or good scores in IELTS, one needs to have a elaborate language. I mean, very stylized language, and they need to have like they need to use very complex words, very unknown words, and all that. So that is absolutely not true, right? So IELTS is it's an assessment of usage of English as close to as close to a native speaker of English. So, and if the native speaker of English do not use elaborate words, do not use very complex words. So, and why do you use it? Of course, in order to get a score of 9.5, it might be required. But generally speaking, for somebody aiming at 7 or 8, so that wouldn't be essential. Like so confidence is much more important than that. So one needs to understand that even if you use simple language, that is absolutely fine. And they need not they need not wait for them to refine the language so much that they include very complex words. So that is one misconception. Second misconception is opposite of it. Some people, the first one being, the people are not so confident because they think that they don't use very stylized English. Opposite to that, there would be people who think that their English is very straightforward, and they make very less errors, and that less error means that they need not worry much. So again, here the problem is that the assessment system, which I would be discussing a bit in detail, is not about error freeness. Error free is just one part of evaluation, but there are much more criteria for it. So those criteria has to be understood and incorporated when a person is responding. Then another misconception which is present among people is that so the questions are like so they would be a person has to speak very fast or very slow. That will be one of the gauges through which they will be assessed. Absolutely no. A person is expected to answer as natural as possible, and as normal as possible. Normal speed is what they are looking for. And if a person is speaking very fast, very slow, there are possibilities that the person might get a less score. So it is always better to have a natural tone and a normal speed. So that way a person have a better chance of scoring very well. So that is the idea. And now speaking about the assessment, speaking about like how they will be scored. So IELTS will always provide band score. It is not like 0 to 100 or something of that sort. Usually that is the exam pattern which people are familiar with. But this is not something of that sort. Since each of these sections are different, each of the way we evaluate each of these skills in these sections are different. So so the evaluation method is also a bit different. So that is, an individual will be assessed from this, with the scale of 0 to 9. So 0 to 9 is the scaling of it, and 7 is always a good score. So I would, the 7 and above, you can always say that that's a good score for any individual. And 0 to 9, a listening section, a person need not worry about it at all, because it is always out of the 40 questions asked, number of answers, and subsequent, for let's say that if it is 35 out of 40, then their band score would be somewhere around 8 or 7.5. So depend, I mean, I need to check the sheet actually, but some somewhere in that ballpark. And if same goes for reading, like so there would be, for the raw score is out of 40 questions how much they have answered, so they would have a subsequent band score attached to it. So 6, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so that will be awarded to them. So when it comes to writing, So there, the evaluation method is entirely different. So the person's response will be assessed with 4 criteria. So the first criteria is either task achievement or task response. We'll speak about the difference, once I end it. And then we have coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range or accuracy. Task achievement and task responses, have they answered the question right? So the question is like, task achievement is, so the description of image, when we were speaking about the writing section, we spoke about description of image, right? So that will be task achievement. So based on that description, have they completed all the points? Have they compared properly? All these things will be assessed in task achievement. For task response, it is for the part two. Part one is task for the part one task achievement, because there is a right answer, because so there are certain points which has to be covered by a person based on the image. For part two, that is task two, it is task response, because it's an essay, and it can't be restricted to certain points. It can be in general. So but the idea is similar, that have they covered all the things required for their answer. So that is assessed with task achievement and task response. Then we have coherence and cohesion. Coherence and cohesion is whether there is a continuity in their writing, and whether they have the right answer which was given, whether there are unnecessary things put in there, whether there are things which doesn't make sense in their answer. So that is second criteria. The third criteria is lexical resource. Lexical resource is nothing but if they have used right words or not. If they have used unnecessary words, very and so to score very well, of course you need to include some words like impediment, or all these things. Some good words has to be used, but no need to go through the dictionary and get some remotely known words and use them. So the words which are generally used by a first language speaker of English, so those words have to be reflected. So that is all. Repeating the same word again and again would would be would reduce the score in lexical research. Then we have grammatical range and accuracy. Grammatical accuracy, people understand if everything is according to the grammar. So also range will be you know a range will be assessed. Grammatical range is the kind of grammar which is used. Grammatical accuracy is if the grammar is correct. Grammatical range is what kind of grammar used. Like for example, if we take example of sentences. So there are different kinds of sentences which are present. There is a passive voice, active voice, a complex sentence, compound sentence, simple sentence. So, how many of these combinations a person is able to make? So that is grammatical range. So combined the two, that is another criteria. So this is writing section. Based on this, 0 to 9 for each of the criteria will be given. Then it will be average to give 0 to 9 at the end. So then we have speaking section. Speaking section, which is evaluation is bit similar to writing section, but here it is fluency. Some criteria would change. Lexical resource and grammatical range and accuracy would be the same. So there is no difference between writing and speaking. Only thing is the writing is about writing and speaking is about speaking. That's the only difference between writing and speaking. When it comes to criteria, lexical resource and grammatical range and accuracy. Third criteria in speaking is fluency and coherence. Fluency is whether a person is repeating themselves, whether a person is taking long pauses when they are speaking. All these things will be gauged with fluency. Then we have coherence, whether the right information is spoken in their speech, whether they have spoken about completely different things than they have that they have been asked. So these things will be monitored in this criteria. And the fourth criteria is pronunciation. If they have used the right kind of pronunciation, or like, if they have, you know accent wouldn't usually matter. Even if a person has an accent, they will not be, they'll not be punished here. But if they have a very wrong pronunciation of the words, if the meaning of the word changes because of the pronunciation, so then the marks will be reduced for pronunciation. And of course, for 8 and 9, uh, a very good pronunciation, which is not so much influenced by accent, is recommended. Otherwise, it is absolutely fine. So this is how the evaluation of IELTS happen. And based on this understanding, a person can prepare themselves and answer. And also they can, if they want additional help, they, you can feel free to contact me. And if there are enough people to work together, we can definitely come to some kind of an understanding, and we can have courses for it. So that would be all from my side. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching our discussion. And hopefully that you crack IELTS test with all the all the with full force, and you will be able to get your victory right. And if you like to practice it, of course, visit Vulcans.in, and you'll be able to have IELTS practice test. Also, you can, in the same website, you can fill in your information for joining our courses. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking about IELTS practice test. All the very best.